Hi everybody, Matt Bernier and Dan Illman taking a look at the Grade 1 Vosburgh here for weekend wrap back on Saturday down at Belmont Park. It figured to be a major prep for the Breeders' Cup Sprint because you had some big names in here that had some big accomplishments, and we got a heck of a horse race out of this whole thing as well. As they break from the gate, you're going to see El Deal. We know El Deal's game. He's speed. They're going to go right to the front with him with Javier aboard, and just to his outside, you're going to see a really promising 3-year-old in Takaful. They're going to have him forwardly placed as well.
Takaful broke very, very well in this spot. I think the question was, could he sit off of another horse? Because he really makes hay when he's the one in El Deal's position, going to the front and controlling things. But Takaful never lets El Deal get away. It must be noted that El Deal was a little bit fractious in the gate, popped open his stall at the start, was able to settle down. He runs his race. Takaful just never gets, he sinks his teeth into this horse's neck and never lets go.
And we've got big pace going on. Opening quarter 22 and 144 and 3 for a half mile. Meanwhile, keep an eye on the horse coming from the back of the pack. That stall walking dude. We all love the dude here in New York. He shows up and runs his race. He got big pace to run at. It's just these top two, they're quite good.
These two are quite good. I wonder if the dude has kind of lost a step as well as he's aged. He trained really well coming into this race. He got the setup that we all expected that he was going to get, but he just couldn't grind them down late. Here it looks like he's got a big chance to win it, but Takaful, to his credit, is still going. El Deal, to his credit, is still going, and Takaful gets there first in a very game performance. These three horses all ran well.
And they all deserve a shot, I think, in the Breeders' Cup. We'll talk about that more momentarily. Takaful goes off, pays $11.80 on the win end. El Deal rounds out the exacta, $3.30 to place. The $1 exacta is $19. Stall walking dude rounds out your try for 50 cents, comes back $26. Takaful is a 3-year-old boy. He's been one of the more polarizing 3-year-olds we had in a year full of polarizing 3-year-olds. Early on, it looked like he could be anything. His stretch out races, 2 turns, clearly not what he wants to do. You get him around 1 turn, he's absolute nails. 3 for 7 lifetime, $441,000 and change as far as earnings are concerned for Kieran and Shadwell, Jose Ortiz with the ride. Now the fact that this horse has shown the ability to sit a little bit, and he has big speed figures in his back pocket, a 107 winning here in this spot, here in a 132 time form US rating. We talked about it a little bit via text. As much as I loved this race, you brought up the lead change on the far turn. How much of that was him? How much of it was Belmont Park? And is it something that you've got to factor in going forward?
Well, it was something that we did not see out of him in his races at Saratoga. I don't really think it's Belmont Park. Again, a lot of trainers say sometimes it's a sign when you change leads early, and then he changed a couple of times in the stretch, maybe an impending sign of a physical problem, a sign of fatigue, a sign of greenness, and none of those 3 things are good. No. But the fact that he still was able to dig in and finish off El Deal was a very good sign for Takaful, and a big speed figure nonetheless. It's something that I didn't love to see. I loved them, of course, being all professional in the stretch, but still, he did more good things in this race, I think, than things that you can knock him for.
El Deal, 104 buyer, 133 time form US rating. He actually had the highest time form US rating coming out of this race because he was the one that cut the fractions. To me, this actually, I got more out of this than I did when he won the Vanderbilt.
I agree with you 100%. This race legitimizes him more than the Vanderbilt or the race before at Monmouth or the race before at Charlestown. 3 tracks where inside and speed were great and just played right into his favor. This race, more of a fair racetrack. He took heat from this horse, and he really didn't want to lose. I am not sure if he's even nominated to the Breeders' Cup Sprint, but these connections have to at least consider the option with his big speed.
Jorge Navarro, it sounded like afterwards, said, we're going to go on with him. We're going to go on to a race like the Sprint, and I believe, like you say, nomination-wise, I'm not sure, but the Vanderbilt, I believe, was a win in your in, so he has everything going for him. Could you make the case that the biggest loser coming out of this race was not a horse that raced here, but maybe it was a horse like Drefong who has that big speed early on?
I think you can make that case. I'm still not willing to say that Drefong is just this one-dimensional speed runner. I think that Drefong will take what you give him. If he's able to go to the lead, great. If he's able to sit off the pace, great as well. We'll see what we get out of El Deal in the next couple of weeks, because now it's a lot of hard races leading up to the Breeders' Cup Sprint. If he goes, sure, now the race sets things up for maybe a stalker or a late runner.
Stall walking dude, you brought up something as we were watching it. Maybe there's a scenario where he's lost his step, and maybe he's just not the old stall walking dude, but at the same time, he's not that far off from these top two. Would you go on to the Breeders' Cup Sprint with him one? And if you would choose not to, is it as simple as we just go back to Aqueduct and we try to make hay in those races?
I think you run in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. He's 7 years old. You have no idea how many more dances are left for Stall Walking Dude. And again, a horse with this sort of running style in a race which is likely to feature an extremely fast pace, boy, it's a nice situation for Stall Walking Dude to be in. He has never really proven to be a Grade 1 horse in the past, despite being a very admirable and popular and hard-trying horse. This was a really good effort, but in the last 150 yards or so, he just came up wanting. Something tells me that if he shows up in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, it'll be a similar situation, because we have to also remember, while his running style works for him, he's going to be out-sprinted very quickly in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. And he might not be rallying from 8 or 9. He might be trying to come into it from 15 lengths out of it, and at Del Mar, and any Southern California track, it's not ideal.
The rest of the field, nondescript, really, but the one horse that we need to touch on is Mr. Crow. Mr. Crow went off as your second choice in here at 5-2 for Todd Pletcher. This was a horse that had gaudy buyers coming into this spot. You and I just hated the fact that he never changed leads, but he had also never faced horses of this caliber. Do you think it was just simply he's not this good?
I think it's a combination that he had never faced horses this good, and he had never faced a pace this lively before. He had been up on the pace in his races, but those paces were not fast at all. This was an extremely fast pace. Mr. Crow was out-sprinted out of there. He was in a good spot. If Takaful and El Deal dueled themselves into defeat, he was sitting there in third, but boy, there was just not a response there. And when you do have a horse like him, poor with his lead changes, tested for the first time, you wonder if maybe there's a little bit of a problem here. I wouldn't be surprised if this race proceeds a layoff.
The Vosburgh was a fantastic race to watch. It ended up being a good betting race if you backed Takaful in here. He goes off at odds of 9-2, and he wins the Vosburgh leading into the Breeders' Cup Sprint with a 107 Beyer speed figure.